The laughter started on the left side of the conference room and spread like a wave. 12 people sat around a table that cost more than most Americans made in a year, and every single one of them was looking at the door, at the man standing in it with a gray uniform, a mop bucket, and an expression that hadn't changed. Gordon Tibbs had worked the night shift at Harwick and Lane Capital for 11 years. He knew which elevator stuck between floors 2 and 3. He knew that the third-floor men's room had a slow drain that nobody had fixed since 2019. He knew the names of the cleaning staff in 4 other buildings on the block, because on slow nights they'd wave to each other through the glass. What the people laughing at him did not know was that Gordon Tibbs had spent 22 years as a structural forensic engineer before the accident that took 2 fingers from his left hand and, more quietly, took everything else. But that was not the kind of thing you put on a uniform. It had started an hour earlier, when Christine Harwick, the firm's managing director, and the woman whose name appeared first on the building's letterhead, realized her entire deal was falling apart. The documents on the table were written in German, not the kind of German a translation app could handle, not the tourist-friendly sentences about train schedules and hotel rooms. This was legal German, dense and precise, the kind that hid intention inside grammar, where a single subordinate clause could shift liability from one party to another without ever raising its voice. Christine Harwick had paid a translator. That translator had confirmed the meeting for that morning, and then, at 6:47 a.m., sent an email explaining that his mother had been hospitalized and he would not be coming in. She had tried 3 agencies. All 3 were unavailable on short notice. She had tried 2 apps. Her assistant, a sharp young woman named Petra, had run both of them and printed the results side by side. The apps disagreed with each other in 2 places, and those were precisely the 2 places that mattered. The meeting with the German firm, Steinhardt Group, was at 9 o'clock. It was now 8:14. Christine was not a woman who panicked. She had closed deals in 4 languages, 2 recessions, and 1 boardroom fire that she still did not like to talk about. But she was standing at the window on the 28th floor watching the street below and thinking, very clearly, that she had no options left. That was when her assistant knocked and said, "Mrs. Harwick, maintenance is here about the sink in the East Conference Room. Tell them to come back tomorrow. He's already in the hallway." And, Petra paused. He asked what language the documents were in. I don't know why I told him. I'm sorry. Christine turned from the window. Gordon was waiting in the hallway with his cart when Christine Harwick opened the door and looked at him the way people sometimes looked at a stray dog that had wandered into a restaurant. Not unkind, exactly, but uncertain about what the appropriate response was. "My assistant says you asked about the documents," Christine said. "I heard her on the phone," Gordon said. "Thin walls." Christine studied him for a moment. He was 61, though he looked older in the way that men who work nights often do. A certain compression around the eyes, skin that had been in too many fluorescent-lit rooms and not enough sun. His uniform had the building's logo on the chest and a small bleach stain on the left cuff that wouldn't come out no matter what. "Do you speak German?" she asked. "Some," Gordon said, which was the kind of answer that told you nothing and everything at the same time. She handed him the documents. He read the first page slowly, the way someone reads who is not translating word by word but thinking in the language, letting the sentences settle before moving on. Christine watched his face. It gave her very little. "This is a joint acquisition agreement," he said. "They're agreeing to purchase a 42% stake in a company called Löwenbau Industrial." He turned the page. "There's a clause here, Section 7, subsection C, that says in the event of a material dispute, arbitration will be conducted under German law in Frankfurt, not U.S. law, not New York." Christine was very still. "That's not what they told us," she said. "No," Gordon said. "I don't imagine it is." She stared at him. "Who are you?" Gordon set the documents down on the cart next to a bottle of floor cleaner. "I'm the man who fixes the sink in the East Conference Room." The Steinhardt Group delegation arrived at 9 o'clock exactly. There were 4 of them, 2 lawyers, a financial director, and the man who ran the firm's American acquisitions, a compact, precise person named Lucas Steinhardt, who wore the kind of watch that didn't need to announce what it cost. Christine had made a decision in the 40 minutes between finding Gordon in the hallway and greeting the Germans at the elevator. She had made the decision quickly, because that was how she made all decisions, and she had spent the 40 minutes not second-guessing it but preparing for it. She had told Gordon what she needed. Gordon had read the full document twice. He had a yellow legal pad now, covered in handwriting that was small and even. The laughter came when Christine's assistant brought Gordon into the conference room during the introductions. It wasn't loud laughter. It was the polite, incredulous kind, the kind that people use when they want to express disbelief without actually committing to rudeness. One of the lawyers from Steinhardt, a man named Fisher who had very good posture and no apparent sense of irony, looked at Gordon's uniform and then at Christine and then back at Gordon, and then said something in German that made the other lawyer smile. Gordon understood it. He didn't react. Christine understood it too, or at least understood enough to know it was dismissive. She looked at Lucas Steinhardt. "Shall we begin?" she said. The meeting lasted 3 hours and 14 minutes. In the first 30 minutes, Christine watched Gordon translate back and forth while both legal teams argued about the nature of a phrase in Section 4 that in English read as a mutual indemnity clause, and in the German original did not. Fisher was emphatic. He used the word eindeutig, unambiguous, 4 times in 6 sentences. Gordon said, in English, he says the language is unambiguous. Then, in German, he said something that made Fisher stop. Lucas Steinhardt looked up from his notes. Gordon said it again, more slowly, and this time he pointed to the page. Christine leaned toward Petra and said quietly, "What's happening?" Petra said, "I don't know." But the one who was smiling isn't smiling anymore. What Gordon had said in German was this: "With respect, the language in subsection D modifies subsection C in a way that creates a conditional indemnity, not a mutual one. The condition is performance-based and defined by metrics in the appendix, which we have not yet discussed. If you intend for this to function as a true mutual indemnity, the document as written does not accomplish that." There was a silence. Then Lucas Steinhardt said, in German, "That is correct." Fisher said something sharp, and Lucas cut him off with one word. Christine watched all of this without understanding the words, and understood everything anyway. Gordon Tibbs had grown up in Regensburg. His mother was from Ohio. His father had been stationed in Germany with the Air Force and stayed after his discharge to marry her. Gordon had gone to German schools until he was 15, then American schools, then a university in Munich, then graduate school in Chicago, where he'd met his wife, Carol. He did not think about those years as lost. He thought about them the way you think about a house you grew up in that someone else lives in now. It was real, it was yours, and now it's something else, and that's all right. The accident had happened on a site visit in 2009. A temporary scaffolding structure he had signed off on had a component failure. Nobody died, which was the grace in it. But the investigation that followed had been thorough and expensive, and had ended with his license suspended pending review. And the review had taken 3 years. And in those 3 years, Carol had gotten sick. He had not gone back to engineering. People sometimes asked him why. He found it hard to explain in a way that didn't sound like self-punishment. Which it wasn't, not exactly. It was more that the job he'd had was load-bearing in a way he hadn't understood until it was gone, and when he tried to picture walking back into that life, he couldn't make the picture hold. He had taken the night shift at Harwick and Lane because it paid steadily, and it ended at 6:30 in the morning, which meant he was home before his daughter left for school. His daughter, Rosalie, was 14 and took the bus to Westbrook Middle because the school with the better math program was across town and Gordon had negotiated with the principal for her to attend on a variance. He drove her to tutoring on Tuesdays. On Thursdays they made dinner together, which usually turned into her quizzing him on whatever she was studying. Last month it had been the French Revolution. This month it was molecular biology, and him answering more than she expected, which she had stopped being surprised by. Rosalie knew her father had been an engineer. She did not know all of the rest of it, and he had not decided yet how much to tell her. At 11:40 in the morning, Lucas Steinhardt asked Gordon directly, not through Christine, but to Gordon himself, whether he had reviewed the appendix that listed the performance metrics. Gordon said he had. Steinhardt asked what he thought of them. Gordon was quiet for a moment. He set his pen down on the yellow pad. The baseline period is defined as the 24 months prior to closing, Gordon said. That's 2021 and 2022. For Lovenbau Industrial, that was an anomalous period. Supply chain disruptions inflated their output numbers. If the indemnity conditions are pegged to that baseline, your client is setting a benchmark that will be extremely difficult to sustain in normalized market conditions. You will almost certainly trigger the conditional clause. Fisher started to speak. Lucas held up one hand and Fisher stopped. "You are not a lawyer," Lucas said. "No," Gordon said. "What are you?" Gordon thought about it for a moment. "I'm familiar with industrial assessments, from a different context." Lucas looked at him for another moment. Then he said, in German, to Fisher, "He's right about the baseline." Fisher said something that Gordon translated in his head and did not repeat aloud. Christine, who had been listening and watching, said, "Mr. Tibbs." "What did he just say?" Gordon said. "He said we should take a 10-minute break." During the break, Christine took Gordon into the hallway. "Where did you learn to read a financial instrument like that?" she said. "I wasn't reading it as a financial instrument," Gordon said. "I was reading it as a structural document. Every complex document has load-bearing elements and decorative ones. You learn to tell them apart." Christine looked at him for a long moment. She was a woman who had built a career on reading people quickly and accurately, and what she was reading in Gordon right now was something she didn't often encounter. The specific stillness of someone who has spent a long time being more than the room expected. "You've done this before," she said. "Not in a conference room," he said. She was quiet. Then she said, "I need you to help me finish this meeting, and then I want to sit down with you and talk about what you actually do." Gordon said, "I fix sinks," Christine said. Gordon. It was the first time she had used his first name. He noticed it because people in buildings like this one usually didn't. "All right," he said. The meeting finished at 12:54. The final version of the agreement had 4 sections revised and 1 appendix replaced entirely. Fisher had stopped arguing somewhere around the 3rd revision, replaced by a quieter, more careful version of himself that read everything twice before responding. Lucas Steinhardt had stopped pretending that the man in the maintenance uniform was not the most useful person in the room. At the end, when the documents were initialed and the Steinhardt delegation was gathering their things, Lucas came around the table and extended his hand to Gordon. "Where did you study?" he asked. "In German." "Munich," Gordon said. "Also in German. And then Chicago." Lucas nodded slowly. "My grandfather went to Munich, engineering, structural. And now you're here." Gordon shook his hand. "And now I'm here." It was not said with bitterness. It was just the truth stated the way you state something true. Lucas held his hand for a moment longer than a handshake requires. Then he released it and picked up his briefcase and walked to the elevator with his team. Christine Harwick sat down at the table after they left. The room was quiet. Petra was gathering documents at the far end. The city was visible through the windows, 28 floors below, doing what it always did. "You can go back to the sink," Christine said. Gordon began to collect his things. "Or," she said, "you can come to my office at 2 o'clock. Gordon looked at her. "I have a standing consultation arrangement with 3 firms," Christine said. "Technical review of acquisition documents, complex transactions, people who know what load-bearing means." She paused. "The position doesn't require a license. It requires judgment." "I haven't worked in that world in 15 years, Gordon said. "I know," Christine said. "I had Petra pull your professional record while you were in the meeting. I hope that doesn't bother you." Gordon considered it. "What did you find?" "That the review board cleared you in 2013, Christine said, "and that you never reapplied." The room was very quiet. 2 o'clock, Christine said again. "You don't have to decide anything today. Just come and talk." Gordon finished the sink in the East Conference Room at 1:15. It was a simple fix, a worn washer in the faucet that nobody had replaced because nobody had looked closely enough. He put in the new washer, ran the water for 30 seconds to confirm it held, and dried his hands on a paper towel. He stood at the sink for a moment. He thought about Carol the way he often did in quiet moments. Not with grief exactly, but with something adjacent to it, a kind of sustained acknowledgement. She would have had things to say about this morning. She would have had opinions about Christine Harwick, which she would have delivered with the kind of precision that made him feel the world was still comprehensible. He thought about Rosalie, who was in school right now, who would come home and ask him how his night went, and then correct herself. His morning, she always did that, because she knew he worked nights, and then tell him something unexpected about molecular biology. He thought about the scaffolding in 2009. He thought about the 3 years of review. He thought about all the small decisions that had led from there to here, to a men's room on the 28th floor of a building in the middle of a city. And how most of those decisions had not felt like decisions at the time, but had accumulated into something that looked, from the outside, like a life. Gordon Tibbs was not a man who blamed himself without reason, and he was not a man who forgave himself too easily either. What he was, after 61 years, was someone who had learned to hold both things at once. He put the wrench back in the cart. He went to 2 o'clock. Christine's office had a view of the harbor. He hadn't expected the harbor. He looked at it for a moment while she poured coffee she hadn't asked if he wanted. Lowenbau Industrial, she said, setting a folder on the desk. If you'd been right about the baseline, and you were right, we would have signed a document that could have exposed us to $32 million in contingent liability. Gordon sat down. And now? Now we've restructured it to a fixed indemnity with a market-adjusted baseline. She sat down across from him. Lucas Steinhardt called me from the car. He said he was impressed. He said, and I'm translating loosely, that we had unusual resources. Gordon looked at the folder but didn't open it. I'm not looking for a title, he said, or an office. I'm not offering you either, Christine said. I'm offering you project-based consultation. You review documents when I need a technical read. You're available when I call. You set your own rate. I work nights, Gordon said. I know. This would be daytime as needed. Not every day. She looked at him steadily. Gordon, I'm not asking you to be something you're not. I'm asking you to use something you already are. Gordon looked at the harbor. A cargo vessel was moving slowly toward the port, low in the water, fully loaded. I'd need to talk to my daughter, he said. Christine nodded as if that were the most natural thing in the world. Of course, and I'd need this to be flexible. If she has something, a school thing, a doctor's appointment, I don't miss it. Understood. He looked back at her. What's the rate? She told him. Gordon was quiet for a moment. That's a lot, he said. It's what I pay the other consultants, Christine said. And they don't catch conditional liability clauses buried in German subordinate clauses. Gordon looked down at his hands. The 2 missing fingers on the left, the ring finger and the pinky, were something he had long since stopped noticing, except occasionally in the way you occasionally notice the weather when it's been the same for a long time. All right, he said. That evening Gordon made dinner. He made the thing Rosalie called the pasta thing, which was actually pasta e fagioli, a recipe Carol had learned from a neighbor in their first apartment and modified so significantly over the years that the neighbor probably wouldn't have recognized it. Rosalie came home and dropped her backpack in the hallway and said, "How was your morning?" and then caught herself. "Your night, I mean. How was your night?" "Interesting," Gordon said. She sat on the counter the way she always did, watching him cook. She was tall for 14, with Carol's eyes and his particular brand of directness that sometimes caught people off guard. "Interesting how?" she asked. Gordon stirred the pot. There was a meeting. They needed someone to translate some documents. Rosalie looked at him. "From German?" "From German." She was quiet for a moment. "And they asked you?" "Eventually," Gordon said. She thought about this. "Did you help?" "Yes." "Did it go okay?" "It went well." Rosalie was quiet for another moment. Then she said, "Dad, are you being modest again?" Gordon looked at her. She was watching him with the particular expression she had inherited directly from Carol. The one that said she already knew and was giving him the chance to tell her himself. "Maybe a little," he said. She jumped off the counter and set the table without being asked, which she did sometimes when she was thinking about something. Gordon served the pasta. They sat down. "They offered me a job," he said. Rosalie looked up. "What kind of job?" "Consulting, going over documents. It would be during the day, some days. Not every day." She looked at him carefully. "Would it be good for you?" Gordon thought about this seriously, the way he thought about things she asked him seriously. "I think it might be," he said. Rosalie nodded. She picked up her fork. "Then you should do it." "I'd still do nights," Gordon said. "Until I figure out the money side of things, Dad," she said, with the patience of someone who had been explaining things to an adult for several years. "You always figure out the money side of things." Gordon looked at his daughter across the table. She was right. He always had. Outside, it was getting dark. The streetlights were coming on one by one down the block. Somewhere in the neighborhood a dog was barking, and then stopped, and the evening settled into quiet. Gordon Tibbs ate his dinner and thought that the world, for all it had taken from him, had left him with a great deal worth keeping. And in the morning, the real morning after his night shift ended, he would come home, and Rosalie would have already left for school, and there would be a note on the counter, the way there always was, with something small and specific in it. A fact she'd learned, a question she wanted to ask him later, a reminder about Thursday dinner. He would put the note in the drawer with the others. There were a lot of them by now. He kept everyone.